Welcome to It's a Woman's World, where we'll meet achieving women making a difference in our world. My guest is Lynda Katz Wilner, a speech and communication trainer, a coach, and a speech and language pathologist with over 30 years' experience. She's the founder and director of Successfully Speaking, a communication consulting firm that helps individuals and teams speak, sound, and look like leaders. Lynda's passion is to help people with speech clarity, confidence, and credibility. Welcome, Lynda.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm so excited to speak with you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm really excited that you're here. I'm thrilled with you because you're a friend from the National Speakers Association. So it's
Right.
kind of fun to know you. Let me start by asking you, how did you get into speech pathology? And did you have any models or what interested you in speech pathology?
Oh my goodness. I'm one of the few people who probably knew at the age of 14, 15 what I wanted to do. I
Oh,
was fascinated by speech pathology and psychology. And what attracted me to speech pathology first was the fascinating phonetic system that they had. So that really has nothing to do. It certainly is what I use as a tool, but it's interesting. That's what fascinated me, that you can write sounds down and transcribe what people were saying, no matter how they said it. And this became very helpful later in my career. So I started out as a speech and language pathologist working in healthcare, working in a hospital with people who had strokes, head and neck cancer, spinal cord injuries, all different types of medical conditions. And I worked with them for many years in rehabilitation and acute care. And I cared so much for the people that I worked with. And I continued in speech pathology, but I started working more with voice, people who had voice disorders.
mhm.
That led me to work with different people like actors and singers and people who needed to use their voice professionally. That's what brought me into where I am today, which is a little bit different from doing therapy.
I really didn't know any of that. And my next question was to ask you, what was the impetus to switch out of pathology and found Successfully Speaking, which is a communication and consulting firm, but you said a little bit of it
Well,
that,
but there's a little more to it, Carolyn,
mm,
because successfully speaking, I've been I had the company Successfully Speaking for over 30 years, and it was both clinical speech pathology as well as professional speaking. So it was both. And it was only just a few years ago where I stopped doing therapy. I was going into nursing homes and helping people with swallowing and dementia and working with family members. I had a private office for many years working with children and adults, so I worked with all aspects of speech pathology, but it started shifting for many reasons. Healthcare has changed so much. And I wanted to work with people who needed to have the communication skills to succeed in the workplace. And
that's
that was part of the
interesting.
shift.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. You just have to tell me, I have to butt in here. You worked with actors. How did you get there? Where were you?
Well, what happened was I was working with an ear, nose, and throat or an otolaryngologist who worked with professional singers, and he brought me in as the speech pathologist to help them. Some of them sang fine, but they had trouble with their speaking voice. And it's the same anatomy, but we may look at it differently. So I started working with professional singers. Along the way, I started noticing that what seemed like a voice problem was actually a regional dialect. So somebody might have been talking nasal, and I thought it was more of a problem when I realized maybe it was more of a Philadelphia accent. I was working in Philadelphia at the time. I'm a former New Yorker, and my accent was something that was very obvious to people when I went to college. So I became very sensitive to the fact that you might have a regional dialect and people are going to stereotype you because of that. And the way to change it is to work on your voice. So all of this merged together, and I started working with people who were actors and singers and professional speakers and people who wanted to either modify a dialect, improve their voice quality, and even working with people who have foreign accents to help them improve the way that they're understood, but not to take away their accent or their cultural identity.
Yeah, yeah. You're more interested in just clarity in speech, uh, allowing them to use an accent, right?
Right. Years ago, Carolyn, a lot of people in my field would say, let's get rid of your accent. Let's eliminate your accent.
I remember that.
And that was maybe 20 or 30, I'm aging myself, but 20 or 30 years ago. And
Mhm.
that's what I was doing. And then we realized, wait a minute, we don't all want to sound the same. We want to embrace our identity. And what's wrong with having an accent where somebody might have a Spanish accent or a Chinese accent, or some accents people love to listen to, maybe an Australian accent or a British accent. And so there's nothing wrong with it. And why should we eradicate all of our cultural identity?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I
No,
think the
I
world
agree.
has shifted a lot now
Yeah,
in that
I
sense.
definitely agree with that.
Mhm.
I started out in the field of English and then I flipped over to speech myself, speech and drama, though
Mhm.
a little bit different from yours. But I do remember learning about accents and some of what you're saying. Yeah. Let's flip over to I have been watching some of your interviews with other people, and I learned that you like to talk about the three V's of communication. Can we discuss those? First, tell me what they are, and then
Yes.
I'll ask you each one.
Sure. The three V's of communication are the visual, how you look,
Mm.
and we could go into it more in a little bit. The vocal, how you sound, and that's my sweet spot because as a speech and language pathologist, that's what I've worked on, the voice quality. And the third part is the verbal, what you say. And these three V's should be in alignment so that we're credible because we've met the people who may look great and have wonderful things to say, but when they talk, it may be annoying to listen, or they have a distracting accent, or you don't even understand them. Well, their vocal is not in alignment with their visual and verbal. And so when one of those is out of sync, they may not be as credible, and we're not sure which V is the real person. And so it may affect their credibility.
Oh, that's interesting. Which V is the real person? Well, but the first one is the visual, right? Let's
Yes.
go into that a little bit.
Okay. Visual is when you walk into a room and people see you. They look at your posture, how you carry yourself, your facial expression. Do you have eye contact? What about your gestures? Are they distracting or are you nervous and holding on to yourself and seem very closed off? That's all the
That's
visual communication,
interesting. Body
body language.
language, that's the word,
Yeah,
body language. Yeah,
right.
yeah, because at first I thought visual, well, what you wear, but that's not that at all.
Well,
It's
it is
way
though,
more.
Carolyn. I'm glad you said that because that's what most people think. What do I wear? I have an interview. What should I wear? They may think about what they're wearing, but how do they carry themselves? Do they have good posture? Do they walk or sit with confidence? Or do they seem very unsure of themselves? So the visual is a very important part. I'm not saying clothing is not important, but somebody else works on that. I'm not an image consultant. I focus more on how do you carry yourself in that clothing.
I see. Yeah, no, I agree. That's very important, the body language, and we forget about that. Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely.
What was the second V? I think I've lost it.
The second one is the vocal, and that's my specialty. Vocal can be everything from, am I pronouncing words clearly? That's where accent may fall in there. Maybe I don't understand. Maybe I'm not understood because of my accent. So it could be pronunciation. It could be your tone of voice. Some people may talk in a very sing-songy voice, and if they talk that way, they may sound more youthful and may not be as believable or confident or credible when they're speaking. That's another part of the voice. A person can be speaking monotone like this, and they put their audiences to sleep, or they don't sound like they have any passion for what they're talking about. Somebody can speak with a lower pitch and Many women do this, like dropping their pitch to talk like this and sound more authoritative, but it's not a very good quality voice. And as you're probably hearing now, it's hard to project that voice. That's not going to be a good quality voice. This, what we call vocal fry, that frying quality in our throat. Another part of vocal could be I'm speaking so quickly when I'm talking, so I sound really nervous and it's really hard for you to follow what I'm saying. Or I could speak so slowly that you become an impatient listener. These are all, when you think of vocal, it's how does it sound? Not what am I saying, but how does it sound when that person's talking? And that's where an accent can become a distraction. I've had people come to me and say, I really want to get rid of my accent. And my response is, it sounds lovely. You're completely understandable. And their response has often been, but when I get up to talk, all they want to know is where I'm from. They're no longer listening to my words. They're listening to how I sound. And that's distracting. So everybody may have their personal reasons for why they want to change it, but I'm very sensitive to that. I don't tell somebody they should change an accent. Sometimes I tell people, embrace it, but we can work on how you could be more understandable and sound more confident in meetings.
Yeah, I like that a lot because I, like you, do remember when people would say, get rid of that accent,
Mhm.
but, and I never heard about that guado, I think you
Oh,
mentioned.
yes, yes.
I think I have a question. I heard you say that before, so let me ask you that later. Okay.
Okay, sure.
And what's the third V?
The third V is the verbal, and that's what we usually think about. What am I going to say? So the verbal are the words and the content of a message. And that can include everything from your vocabulary to your grammar, not just how it sounds, but are you constructing the language correctly? So it could be vocabulary, it could be grammar. And most importantly, Carolyn, it's organization. When you talk, and when I'm finished talking, do you walk away and say, I know what she was talking about? Or do you say, what was the point of that? I don't get it. And if that happens, I'm not organizing what I'm saying. So I've developed strategies to help people remember how to be very organized when they give a message.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. I know I'm a member of Toastmasters, and even in the small questions that were asked occasionally, you're supposed to organize even when it's only 2 minutes or 3 minutes, give a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yeah.
Or even 20 seconds. So I'll tell you this
Yeah.
quick little tip, and I call
Yes.
it the ties approach. The T is you need to know what is your topic. You don't have to announce it, but what am I talking about so I stay on track? I introduce it, that's the I. I give some examples, that's the body of the talk. And the part that most people forget is the S, and that's the summary. Like, do I wrap it up and tell people what I just told them or what I want them to do with that information? Most people forget that part. So it's the ties approach.
Ties. Okay, say it again, the one word
Ties.
for each T.
It's topic,
Topic.
introduction,
Uh-huh.
E is examples,
Okay.
and S is summary.
Oh, great. I
So
love
you
it.
tie it up in a neat package, you put the bow on it, and people say, "Oh, she really knows what she's talking about. I know what the point of that message was."
Yeah. Oh, I like that a lot. I have to write that down. I hope people listening write that down because that's a quick way to organize your speech. Lynda, I think we only have about a minute left. So I know I've got lots of other questions for you. And I heard you mention pronunciation and rhythm, and we're going to go into those in the second half. So we'll break for a short public service announcement and return with Lynda Katz Wilner to give us more examples of successfully speaking.
Because my parents told me I have to be responsible.
Because my first coach told me, you can do this.
Because my teacher helped me see the choices.
Because my coach treated me like everybody else.
Because my boss showed me how to do a good job.
Because a mentor believed in my potential.
Is why I am where I am today.
I'm swimming faster than I ever dreamed I could.
I discovered that I could work as an artist.
I led my high school team to 2 championships.
I am a valuable employee.
I have a career that I am passionate about.
I will be whatever I want to be.
What can you do?
What can you do?
Like all young people, youth with disabilities should grow up expecting to work and succeed. For more information, visit whatcanyoudocampaign.org.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Lynda Katz Wilner about speaking successfully for better communication. Lynda, the first half of our show, we talked about the 3 V's of communication and accent modification and stressing the correct syllables, or sometimes you make the fun to go syllable. Let's go into some other problems with clear communication. You did mention pitch frames and glottal and vocal fry, which truthfully I had never heard of. So could you clarify those for us, please?
Sure. When we're talking about pitch, I'm just talking about whether you have the high pitch, the low pitch, how you're speaking, the quality of your voice. Something else that happens is the up talk, where people will make a statement, and in that statement, they make it sound like a question. And this is very common with more youthful females, but everybody does it. And in some cultures, it's acceptable. It's used a lot in other cultures. But when we hear somebody speaking that way, we think that either they're not done talking or they don't sound very confident because it sounds like their statement is a question. For example, the meeting will begin at 3. Sounds like I'm not sure. So that's the pitch range. And I already mentioned the monotone, speaking to sing-songy, but that's pitch, that part of the vocal. You asked me, Carolyn, about the glottal fry, vocal fry. Those terms are used interchangeably. Speech pathologists call it glottal fry. The public may call it vocal fry. Linguists call it creaky voice. Basically, it sounds like fried bacon, like something's frying and our voice is very crackly. So if you remember, I demonstrated that earlier, and that type of voice sounds tired, lacking energy. And even when we get tired, that does happen. What do we do to change it? Take a breath, and if you have more breath behind your voice, you can eliminate the vocal fry, glottal fry, creaky voice, whatever we want to call it.
I see. Yeah, I had not really heard that word, glottal. I like the idea of frying bacon, so people will remember that.
You're right, that crackly sound with our vocal cords just vibrating very irregularly, and there's not enough air coming through to give a strong voice.
So as you said, we just need to breathe, take a breath, so that we don't end up.
Right. Breath is going to help us with so many aspects of voice.
Yeah.
Nervousness, everything. The breath is the foundation of our speaking. That's how we get voice. Air coming up past our vocal cords.
Yeah, very true. Thank you. Yeah. The other thing that I've heard you mention, and I don't remember what it is, but would you talk to us about Miss Persnickety?
Yes. Miss Persnickety is my alter ego. Early in my career, a graduate student, when I kept correcting her spelling, and in my field, it's important to spell correctly if you're writing in medical charts, but she turned to me and said, "You know, you're very persnickety." And I thought, well, that was an insult. And as the years went by, I've embraced the fact that I am persnickety. I hear misspeaks. I hear when people pronounce things incorrectly. I hear when there are grammatical errors. I see typos in menus, that's just, and signs. That's just who I am. So I actually wrote this book, Miss Persnickety's Guide to Everyday Misspeaks. Now, these are mispronunciations or misspeaks that even highly educated people use. Some of them are regional. When I was living in Maryland, some of it's, you'll often hear like anyways or across. There is no T in across. But I would hear like put one leg across the other. Certain ways of pronouncing aren't correct, but yet they may become common in certain regions or certain demographics. But I started hearing them. I'm trying to think of other ones, irregardless, or using me and my friend, or him and me, but using him and I, using pronouns incorrectly. So I gathered a series of these and put them together in a book, just a fun book of mispronunciations and misuse of words.
Well,
And
that's cute. I had not heard of this before in your book.
now, one thing I want to clarify, Carolyn, is I'm very cautious in how much I share this now, because we're trying to embrace all different backgrounds and not everybody speaks perfectly. So Miss Persnickety has to take a back seat sometimes, and I only bring her forward when somebody is coming to me for that, where they want to speak very grammatically correct. If somebody else is choosing to speak in a way that connects better with their audience, so be it. So I'm not judging, but I'm helping people identify what might not be the correct grammatical way to say it, and it's up to them if they want to change it. I want to be real careful about that.
That's very interesting. To me, well, I also have an English background, so I can't understand somebody wanting to misspeak to an audience.
Well, let me give you an example. If you're in sales, when you're talking to certain people, you may mirror the way that they're speaking to connect with them. So it may not be grammatically correct, or you may not be pronouncing things clearly, but you're connecting with them and speaking in a way that they speak. So that can be done in sales. Now, I personally don't choose to do that, but I've heard people do that in sales when they're speaking to a certain demographic. They may change their grammar and speech just so they connect better with that person. So a lot of the things that I say are the gold standard. We just want to be aware of it. I mean, even back to what we said about body language, it may not be good to cross your arms because it's very closed off. But what if that other person is that way? It may be okay to mirror their posture to connect with them. So
I actually have heard that, Lynda. I've just never heard it with speech. That's very interesting.
the biggest takeaway, which we know in our field for the National Speakers Association, is know your audience and tailor how you're speaking and acting to the particular audience you might be speaking with.
You're right. You're right. Well, you spoke about sales, so let's go into some problems in the workplace with speech and successfully speaking.
Sure. Besides somebody being a non-native speaker, because that could be a challenge, but we already discussed that. Let's talk about another group, and that's the rising leader. Somebody who is promoted to a new position. Let's say now they're a manager and they have to lead a team and they don't speak with confidence. They don't have what we often call the executive presence. And so I can help them develop that executive presence, especially by looking at those 3 V's. Do they look the part? Do they sound the part? And do they speak the part? And so very junior people moving up into their organization, or leaders who are up there in the C-suite and they're not speaking in a way that is commanding. Perhaps they're not that grammatical. I have people I remember from different parts of the state would say, well, where we live, we never spoke really well. I have a lot of work to do. Well, now they want to improve the quality of the grammar and their speaking. So those are the people, rising leaders or leaders are very often the people I work with in the workplace, or a female who somebody just recently said to me, can you work with her? She has such a little girl voice and she doesn't sound like a leader. She sounds very timid. Those are the people in the workplace who could benefit from coaching that I do.
I see. Well, that's very interesting. Yeah. And what are these tools that you use to work with these people? And some of the audience might want some of those tools too.
The best tool I use is up here, because my ability to listen and hear what needs to be addressed. But in this day and age, years ago, I used my tape recorder, and then I used my video recorder. And now we've gotten to the point where there are some online platforms that we can use that are assisted by AI. So with many of my clients, I use a product that I call the Advantage platform, which is powered by Udly. That's an application, an AI application that's out there on the market now, where people can practice speaking, record their speech. AI can ask them follow-up questions, or they can even practice conversation and scenarios to make themselves more comfortable, or they can practice sales calls. All of these can be done on the platform. And then the platform coaches the person with AI feedback that's been trained by my information. I input my information on what I think is important. So they have AI feedback. AI could tell them if they're speaking too fast or too slow, if they have a lot of ums, which Toastmasters has done a lot with that.
Yes.
If they're using weak vocabulary, like just, maybe, so, those type of words. If they're, I'm trying to think what else, if they're using appropriate vocabulary, like gender appropriate, like guys, it will catch you if you say guys. It will catch you if you say crazy, because they're looking to make sure that you're using inclusive vocabulary. All of this is done through AI. So my clients, it can supplement what I'm doing with them. They can send me their files and I can give them feedback and we can discuss them in the sessions. So that's a wonderful tool that I'm using now.
That's amazing. And this is Udly?
It's called Yoodly,
Yeah.
YOODLI.ai, like artificial intelligence. And I have a white label version, so that one is customized because it has my training videos on there. And I've also trained the platform. So when they get the AI feedback, it's using a lot of my methodology.
Do they have to go through you to get this Udly then?
If they want mine, if they want the free version, that is available.
Oh, good.
Udly.ai.
So they have a choice, the free version, or if they're
Absolutely.
working with you or want to work with you, then that's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We have a few minutes left, 3 minutes actually. I'd like to flip over to listening skills because I know that's a very big thing, and I'm interested in that as well.
And Carolyn, we always think about when we're talking about public speaking, it's all about speaking and how do we look and how do we sound and what do we say.
Right.
A huge part of communication, which we have very little training in, is listening, the other end of speaking. And I developed an approach called the OLE approach, where it's very similar to my 3 V's. In order to have a good relationship, you need to observe the person. That's the visual. You need to listen to the person, listen to what they're saying, listen to how they're saying it. And if you observe and you listen, that's how you engage with people. So I call it OLE, O-L-E.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah. So the OLE approach is focusing on communication, but it's not just what is the person saying, that's the verbal, but how are they saying it? That's the vocal. And how do they look when they're saying it? That's the visual. And we need to take all of those signals in to truly understand what a person is saying, because they can say, I'm fine. Well, the words say something, but their tone of voice and their facial expression says something different.
Right,
You
right.
need to learn to read all of that to be
That's
good
great.
communicators.
So these are great tips on being a good listener. Tell us, Lynda, how can people get in touch with you?
I do have a website, successfully-speaking.com. I am on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn you can subscribe to my newsletters, and monthly I post communication newsletters. And I have 2 YouTube channels. One is Lynda Katz Wilner, and the other one is Speak Successfully. That has more training videos. The Lynda Katz Wilner has a lot of my interviews where I'm a guest or I'm a host, and some of my presentations that I've done, because I do go to companies and give workshops and presentations.
Wow, that's wonderful, Lynda. People have lots of good places to go for free information about successfully speaking.
Yes.
Thank you, Lynda. It's been wonderful having you on my show. Communication skills is one of my favorite topics, so I love learning your perspectives on it.
And it's been great talking to you about this, Carolyn. I know we've talked a lot before, but never the nitty-gritty and details of what I do.
It's been fun. I hope you've enjoyed hearing these tips on communication skills from Lynda Katz Wilner, and you'll check out her website for tips about communication and accent modification, and let us know which ones you used and in which situation. If you know someone who'd be a great fit for our show, contact us. We're Woman's World TV at AOL.com. Remember, it's a woman's world. I'm Carolyn Bruna. See you next time.